I had sold a company prior to starting Spear and Clover, and had started coaching other entrepreneurs, and I just love it. As you know, like there's nothing that gives me more energy than helping other entrepreneurs, than talking through those problems and helping them to make the right decisions for them, and teaching wherever I can in between.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Walk 12 podcast. If you're tuning in on YouTube or any of the podcast directories, make sure to do yourself one teeny tiny little favor and make sure to give us a follow because I don't want you to miss out on any of the amazing guests I got coming on this year. Without further ado, I got a returning guest here. So I literally just checked before we actually press record. It's been about 100 episodes. As of today, the day we're recording, episode I think 210 is about to drop tomorrow. And so it's about to be exact. And this our last episode was 118. So Jason, for anyone who hasn't seen our last episode and has been living under a rock, tell us your quick elevator pitch. Who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, so my name is Jason Skeesick. I own a couple of companies. I've owned a gym in Chicago called Bucktown CrossFit for about 14 years. I own a company called Spear and Clover. That's how you and I know each other. You came on my podcast, Spear and Clover, and we've developed a relationship ever since. So we talk every single week, which is one of the highlights of my week. And I also am one of the owners and CEOs of a company called Primal Mountain Medical, which is a men's health clinic out of Utah. And it serves men with hormone replacement and peptides and stem cell therapies and all sorts of stuff that is designed to help increase longevity and health span and performance. So that's what I'm doing. I got my hands in a couple of different pies.
Yeah, amazing, Jason. So for anyone that doesn't know and hasn't listened to the last episode, so I actually am part of Jason's mastermind. Has been doing so since January. So me and Jason have talked quite a bit, and he's kind of seen this whole AI journey progress from like the very baby. I wouldn't even call it the baby stages. I would call it the development stages when I was still in the womb cooking up whatever it was that I was going to end up being. And then once I actually launched and everything. So Jason's been here around for a while. And in the last episode, we kind of talked about his backstory, how he got into what he got going on, how he got into the gym space. And then from that, how he got into Spear and Clover. And he actually wasn't doing the men's health stuff, Primal Mountain Medical, right?
Right.
Yeah, you weren't doing that back when we talked last time, no?
No, I had sold a company prior to starting Spear and Clover, and had started coaching other entrepreneurs. I had been doing that already with another organization as part time, and I just
Yeah.
love it. As you know, like there's nothing that gives me more energy than helping other entrepreneurs, than talking through those problems and helping them to make the right decisions for them, and teaching them wherever I can in between. It's a funny story how we met. You mentioned AI. I'm the type of person where my whole life, I just couldn't help but fall. I get really into things, right? Whether it was
Mm.
snowboarding or baseball or cars or whatever it is. And my whole life, even when I was a little kid, I would take that thing that I was super passionate about it, and I'd be like, oh, can I do this as a job? Can I, they always tell you do what you love. That was always what I wanted to do. And so when AI first dropped to public, was in, I think, November of
Yeah. Late
what,
November 2022.
2022. Yeah. And the very next day that I found out about it, I was like, I'm going to use ChatGPT as a muse project to see what I can learn about ChatGPT. And I'm going to build a whole course on how to use ChatGPT to build a business using only ChatGPT. So literally only editing with the delete key. And so I put prompts in, I recorded the whole thing, and in one day was able to get together everybody that's used it knows that ChatGPT is pretty impressive. It's not, a perfectly finished product, and neither was the Muse project that I made, but it was just this really great way to immerse myself in, learning how it worked, seeing what it would come up with. And in fact, it was coming up with pretty good answers. Like I said, I wouldn't probably publish a book based on it, but it was pretty good. And we had recently met through podcasting, and you saw that, and I knew you were interested in AI. And so those conversations that came after that were so great. At the time, I was just giving that away, that course, and I don't sell that course. I just gave it away. But it was just such a great way for me to kind of roll up my sleeves and kind of learn about it. And that's sort of how I go about everything. I get interested in CrossFit, and a few months later we started a gym. I got interested in sort of longevity and health span for men at my age and older. And the next thing I know, I meet a great partner, and we start this company, Primal Mountain Medical. And so I'm sort of blessed and cursed with this thing where if I'm not super into it, it's a hard no for me. It's, people always say it's either fuck yes or fuck no. And I've just been very, very blessed to have, that fuck yes mentality, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. And let's start talking, getting deeper into that because we're very much alike. You're just a little tiny bit older than me, but we're very much alike. And I mean, of course, we already know that. But for anyone listening, I'm also the same way, right? I was like, if I'm in it, I'm in it. I'm going all in. I'm, balls to the wall. I got to figure something out. I got to plan this event. I got to do whatever it is. But then I also like a lot of different things, and I like new ideas, and I get a lot of energy from starting new projects. Like I get super passionate, I get super energized, and like I'm on go 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 because it's like I feel like I'm stretching myself. And then once I get into like the more mundane, I guess monotonous tasks, right? Then it's like, do I really still want to do this? Like it'd be a lot more fun to start something completely new in another. And that was like my whole 2022. Like I was in real estate, I was teaching social media classes, I was doing the podcast, still working at the restaurant. And after all that pretty much failed miserably, that's where you kind of came into my life. So I guess let's start there. So like for anyone that kind of has that like, all right, I just want to go all into something, and as soon as I enjoy something, just like learn as much as I can, because that leads to like shiny object syndrome. One is like not kept under control. So like let's start there. Like, what advice you got to the people who are super excited, especially like the younger entrepreneurs, because they get into entrepreneurship and it's like this whole brand new world. Like, oh my goodness, I can start a business, I can make money online, I can make money doing whatever it may be. And there's so many different ways to, skin the cat, as they say. How do you kind of start getting that shiny object squirrel syndrome under control?
Yeah, I mean, I think about it like this. If I just learned addition and subtraction and I got really into math and I was like, I learned addition and subtraction and maybe even multiplication, and I was like, all right, now I'm going to move on to writing, I would never really have cracked the surface of actually what the really exciting part of math is, right? In the same way with a business, so many entrepreneurs, they have the easy thing, which is the idea. um, but then once they get it kind of sketched out, or they get it kind of the initial itch is scratched, they want to move on to some new exciting thing. But what I've found, at first through, just another coach banging my head against the wall enough to realizing, well, hey, there's a lot more really great work and really great projects to build within that initial idea. And so it's much more like you're revealing the statue from the stone. It's not done until you get to the finest details. And so, I've talked about this a lot. This is something that has plagued me as a younger man as well. But now, looking at what I'm working on now, whether it's helping other entrepreneurs, there's me and you have worked together on many different problems, some of the same problems multiple times, some new problems. But to me, you're somebody that I can continue to help. And I never feel better. And I think most entrepreneurs are this way. I absolutely never feel better than when I know that I'm helping somebody, when I'm helping them, not just today, but in a way that'll allow them to go out and solve problems in the future, whatever that is, right? Same thing for the health company. Is sure, there's this initial problem. How do we, reach out to clients in such a way that we can speak to the things that they're looking for and help them, get the transformation and get away from the pain that they're living in? Well, that initial thing took us 6 months to kind of figure out how to do that. And we could have said, all right, that's where we're going to stop. We've got this thing. It's very comparable to other similar businesses out there. We're just going to hit repeat on that and we're going to sell it. We're going to bundle it up and we're going to sell it to somebody else. But that's not at all what we were doing. What we were saying is, okay, great. Now we have this, business, this machine that knows how to speak to these people that need our help, that knows how to deliver, sort of the highest level of that help that we can. But what are the other things that they need? What are the other things that they need? Do they need fitness programs? Do they need nutrition help? Do they need to learn about the environmental toxins that are working against them in their food or their water or just their house? Do they need a mastermind where they can have, brotherhood and support and kind of a way to stay on track over the long term? And all of those things now exist in our company. And as far as I know, we're the only ones that are doing some of those things at all. I don't know of anybody doing those things. And now, even as we sit here today, I could list off another 3 or 4 things that we're looking at down the line within this original idea that are shiny as hell, man. Like those things are exciting to me and appealing to me. And it's like, okay, well, we need to get this much money in the bank, or we need to have this big of a staff, or we need to have this many clients before we can roll on to phase 3 or phase 4 or phase 5 and on and on and on. And so, there's people out there that will tell you there's better ways to make money, right? You you buy a machine that makes bricks and you just keep feeding that shit sand, right? You just keep feeding it sand and it's going to make more bricks. And that is a very good way to make money. But for people like me, and I think like you know, we're excited about building something. Well, there's so much that you can build just within that thing that you already have. And I think there was enough times of me jumping off of one treadmill and getting onto another where I realized that that ultimately was not fulfilling.
Yeah, no. That's where I ended up coming to terms. That's what you helped me out a lot with, is like not trying to do as many things. 'Cause as you know, I get a ton of ideas, and it's like being able to filter through the ones that you actually need to do. I think is one of the best things I've learned. And I'm still working on it because there's times where, like, I'm in the process right now launching my mastermind, right? And I was like, all right. Like, and my main thing has always been like the course, but then there's also a point where like I was coaching. Then there's a point where like I was kind of thinking about getting back into like doing the agency route, and it's all within the one company, Stop and Stare Media. Like, but I was like, all right. I gotta focus on the people that I currently have with me right now, making sure they're happy. And then once I do that, well, then more happy people eventually start coming. And it's like, and we had a conversation about this too, I think a couple weeks ago, and I think I was telling you about how I feel like sometimes I learn too much for my own good, because
Yeah.
now it's harder to know what I need to do in this moment, because I
Yeah.
got all these different voices in my head, one already, but then two, all these different people giving advice on different stages of business, with their context being at a different stage than business than I'm currently in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so it's like it gets very difficult at times to try to navigate and figure out, all right, what it is do I that I have to do now. So it's like, I guess, to bring it back to you, like, how do you kind of prioritize like
Mm-hmm.
what needs to get done versus like some of the things that like either could get done later or actually probably shouldn't get done?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough question, right? And the first thing I'll say is there's a great book called Essentialism. I think it's Greg McCown. Essentialism just totally reframed the way that I look at just life in general. And I wouldn't go as far as to say as I've mastered it because, I've been a materialist all my life, so it's hard to turn that boat around. But what I will say is, people like us, I'm telling you, me and you know each other really well, and this isn't just for the podcast, right? Like it's me and you know each other well. We're very similar, cut from very similar cloth. And it's like, yep, I have that ability to see a bug on the ground and zoom way into that bug. And if I do that enough, it's really easy for me to get so zoomed in on this thing or so zoomed on that thing that I lose sort of the bigger picture. I lose the forest from the trees, or whatever the phrase you want to say is. And so that's where I think guiding principles, things like essentialism, things like understanding exactly what your objectives are, and then comparing which of those different things will actually lead you towards those objectives and which won't. That's some ways that you can do it. I always have a whiteboard, as you've seen many times. I always have a whiteboard right here. If I put it up in front of me, it's so silly. It's so obvious. A lot of times it's like, oh yeah, we probably don't need to worry about, you know, that t-shirt program where we're going to give everybody t-shirts while we're not fulfilling on any of our services.
Yeah.
Like it gets so easy. You get excited about, starting this podcast that's going to support the business. Yeah, but we're still delivering everything late. Right. So there's things, it just, once you put it up on a board, that really helps. And, I also think, that plus equals minus. You should always have somebody plus, you should always have somebody above you that you can reach out to who's been where you're trying to go, that can reach back and kind of give you some advice. Equals, you should always be in masterminds or at least in regular conversation with people that are roughly on the same level as you. And then minus, you should always be mentoring other people that are further behind you on the path, because seeing it again through their eyes can remind you of a lot of the lessons that you may have forgotten. And so there's always sort of this, network of these principles and network of these individuals that I can reach out to and that I can use as sort of kind of guideposts of like, hey, does this sound crazy to you? And they're like, no, that's good. Or yeah, that you probably shouldn't be focused on that. And so that's sort of my answer is it comes over time. Another thing that I've used a lot, this visualization I've used a lot, is I come up with an idea and I think of it as, like I said earlier, like I'm taking a block of marble and I'm revealing a sculpture. And I ask myself, is this new thing that I want to do? Is this me revealing more of the fine detail of the beautiful sculpture, or is this me like taping something back onto it? right?
Mm.
Because perfection is not when you've added all that you can add. Perfection is when you've removed all that you can remove, and only the most essential, sort of beautiful statue remains.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. I actually haven't heard that one in none of our conversation. I think you've been hiding some of the sauce from me. I haven't heard that one before. I
I
don't
think
think.
about that all the time. And actually, can I be honest with you? So I'm the CEO of this company. I have two partners, but I'm one of the main owners.
Yeah.
And so when I go to them, there are things about business. One's a doctor, right? And I can't tell him about medicine. And I'm a CEO. I've run businesses for the majority of my adult life. And so there's things about business that he doesn't fully know, right? And so when I go to them, it would be very easy for me to go like shiny object idea, guys, we're going to go do this thing. We're going to take that hill. And they would probably just fall right in line with it. And so I kind of have to check myself a little bit. And one of the ways I do that is to actually I act as my own sort of devil's advocate, right? Like, hey,
Mm.
is this adding something that doesn't need to be there, or are we actually clarifying and beautifying this business that we're building together? And so that has really served me well in making sure that like, hey, but actually do they even care about that? Or do we have the team in place that can really energize that at the highest level? Do we have the finances to where we're comfortable enough to do that and actually energize it? There's all sorts of things. I'll give you one right now. Yesterday we were talking about this. Um, we're very involved in men's health and performance, right? So hormone replacement, peptides, supplements, nutrition, fitness, that type of stuff. Well, I've been a gym owner for 14 years, and my partner was a gym owner as well in the past. It would be so easy for us to go like, we're going to start a gym too, guys. We can't do that. You know what I mean? It was like one of those things that came up in conversation. And it's fun to talk about, but it's like, okay, when we have a couple thousand clients and they're all in one geographic, okay, then we can talk about things like that. But at this point, all that would really do is distract our efforts, which are really designed to be laser focused on delivering this one transformation for this one very specific type of person who really needs our help. And they're looking to us to deliver superior service, superior value, superior results than what the other options are.
Yeah. So you mentioned a good point, right? About like delivering on something, and I think, well, and we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier too, about like all the different ways to make money online and shiny object syndrome or whatever. But what a lot of people when they get into like entrepreneurship, it tends to start off, at least at this stage, as like a side hustle. Like I just need a way to make some cash. I need a way to make some money. So like, what would you say is like the mindset shift that you need to make to go from, hey, I just need to make some cash and sell some stuff, to like actually delivering on a promise, on a transformation, on a specific outcome, and like really narrowing down what that is for your business, versus just like, hey, I got some extra shirts that I don't wear, let me just sell it and and flip it on eBay, or let me
Yeah.
just what would you say is the main difference?
Yeah, I'm a big metaphor guy. So I'll give you another metaphor. It's basically like this: everybody needs to work out to stay in shape. Not everybody needs to do combat sports where they learn jujitsu or kickboxing and goes like super deep down like a specific thing. If you have the interest, it'll make it easy, right? I have the interest. I just got back from jujitsu 20 minutes ago. Uh, I can't wait to make it into the gym. If that's you, you probably know. You should go try it. And I think all people, especially women, should, not in the metaphor, but like all people should know how to defend themselves. But I'm just saying, like, if you have the interest, it's so easy to just feed that interest, feed that interest, feed that interest. If you just want to stay in shape and be healthy, go to the gym, hit the treadmill, pick up weights, learn how to carry things, do different types of, lengths of workouts and intensities of workouts, mix it up a little bit, but do it to stay healthy. But for those people that have that interest, it's already, you should test it to see if it's there. But if it's there, it's so easy to motivate yourself to go do it, right? And I would say the same thing about these types of businesses like e-commerce, real estate. Those things do not interest me, and to my detriment. I don't. Those guys make a lot of money, and particularly, actually, both of those. You can make a ton of money that way, and especially like e-commerce, you can set it and forget it. I know guys that make 7 figures a year take home, and they've got an automated business that makes a lot of money. You can start that as a side hustle. You can learn the ins and outs of it and scale it incrementally and do very, very well for yourself. If that's you, please, by all means, do that. I sort of need, I'm just a service business entrepreneur. I've just discovered that about myself. I need to, number one, I need to deliver superior value and actually solve a problem for somebody. Selling a
Mhm.
toothbrush on Amazon does that, but doesn't scratch the itch for me. And so if you're one of those people that's like really passionate about like, no, I want to learn all about, I want to learn all about, these supplements, or I want to learn all about this way that the body responds to this, or I want to learn all about race cars or whatever it is, then I think those people kind of self-select. And then you just have to know, all right, well, now we're in the jungle. We got to figure out how to make kills. We got to figure out how to get out there, how to market ourselves, compare, meaningfully differentiate ourselves from our competitors, and really build the thing that they want, right? If you just want to make money, totally fine, totally valid, no disrespect. You can follow a course, you can follow a person who teaches you how to set up the SEO and set up the fulfillment and the automations, and then you can scale that with money and with some insight. And I'm not diminishing that type of business. I'm just saying those people that are like the people I'm describing, and like you are and like I am, I think then you just become a shepherd of your own interest, right? You just figure out what you're interested in and put the ways to make money right in front of those things that you're interested in. Man, I'm really interested in nutrition, fitness, and men's health. Great. Put me in charge of a men's health clinic, and we're gonna crush. Put me in charge of a bike shop. I'd probably do good because I like bikes, but that's a bad example.
No, that makes perfect sense. It's like knowing like what you said scratches the itch, and like for
Yeah,
me, that's part of the reason why like I never really thought of like creating something to sell physically or tangible, or like
product.
selling products. Like for me, because I got into real estate, as you already know, and for the people listening, I got into real estate. Part of the reason why, because I was at K Jewelers for a little while, and I was selling people jewelry, and like the smile on their faces when they would get like anniversary rings or like gifts for birthdays, they would leave so happy. And I'm just like, well, imagine it was a house, no brainer, right? They'll be
Yeah,
even happier. So I figured, why not? Because I was already interested in real estate to try to get into wholesaling, and then that didn't work out. So I was like, man, let me just stop selling jewelry. Let me just sell houses, make way more money, and then also probably make a even way bigger impact. Because that's probably for a lot of people sometimes the biggest purchase that they'll ever have in their life. For most people, the biggest purchase they'll ever have in their life. So like for me, I very similar to you. I had that itch, like, man, I gotta be with people and like help them get that value, that service. I have to help educate them and help them through the process. I didn't want to be. It feels a lot more transactional. I feel, and that's just how I personally like feel when it comes to like selling, let's say, a cup, right? This might be the best cup. This might be even better than the Stanley Cup, right? But
right.
it's like if I were to sell this, knowing it was even better than the Stanley Cup, something about it similar to you just it wouldn't satisfy that itch. And so to kind of take us through what you have going on now, like what was it like, kind of starting a business again, and kind of going through all this process and all the things that we kind of talked about through this conversation so far, right? But now you also have years and years, over the decades worth of experience of owning a business. I mean, like, what was it like this time around?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, certainly, the businesses, believe it or not, are very similar. Owning a gym was very similar to now owning a clinic. A lot of the same things apply. A lot of the same people, like literally the avatars, have a ton of crossover. um, the things that are popping up now I've been through before, although we're going to eclipse, if we haven't already, we're going to eclipse where I got with a brick and mortar location with a clinic that's primarily telehealth very quickly. But I would say the biggest thing for me was I'd always been in business, right? Like capital B business. I'm selling to clients, B2C, right? I'm selling to clients. And then for a brief time, about 3.5, 4 years, I was only selling to entrepreneurs. I was working with other entrepreneurs, and I love that. That might be my favorite thing to do professionally is talk to people like you, help them overcome things and see them go make a bigger impact on the world to their clients, right? Um, but I missed being able to execute these ideas and these concepts on my own. And so that's where I sort of have arrived at this kind of hybrid position where I still have some clients that I help that are in business, and I'm helping them overcome obstacles. I'm acting as an advisor. I'm running things back and forth with them, the things that we do every single week, right?
Mm-hmm.
I still look forward to that call every single week with you and with the other folks that I work with. Um, but I will say it's a lot of the same conversations. Whereas when I start to get into actual business again, I'm finding again that there's just an immense mountain that I can climb, and I really don't see any end to it in sight. There's no doubt that we could be serving 20,000 people in 10 years if we continue to execute. And then that opens doors to serve them in other ways. And there's just so many things that we can do. And so I definitely missed being the man in the arena. And so getting back in there and doing business again, as opposed to just helping other people do business. And in fact, kind of doing both at the same time a little bit has been a really good mixture for me. Like I would do what I do with you for free. I love it that much. I probably will at some point just continue to do that. I've had a free mastermind for a couple of guys from
Yeah.
my jujitsu gym who were starting small businesses in the past, and I would do that for free. The thing that I'm really interested in is being able to be there and actually build the thing.
Yeah. I would say don't make it free because then I would take it less serious.
I was,
Yeah.
I didn't include that, but the folks that were in that, no disrespect to them, I love all three of them. The folks that were in that did not have the same buy-in that somebody like you would. You're right about
Yeah, and that's one of the things. So that's one of the reasons why I actually ended up joining. I mean, you already know the story, and for anyone who hasn't heard it before, so around the time when I joined, I was, as I said, everything was going like south for me. And I was like, all right, let me focus on my podcast. That's the one thing I know I generally do enjoy doing. Like having these dope conversations with people that are, much further ahead in life and just talking business and seeing what it took to like get them from where they are, where they were to where they are now. Like how their whole journey come. I've always been a sucker for deep talks and figure out what makes people think and what makes people, do what they do. And so that was just like me going all in. And at the time, and I say this when I'm doing my keynotes now, like when I do my webinars and workshops, like, and I was like, I had the first month payment, but like months 2, 3, 4, and 5, I don't know, right? And so I was on the fence, and I was like, maybe the reason my money is tight is because I was being tight with my money,
that. Hmm.
and I was like, well, I could just sit here and not do it, but like at the end of the day, money will always come back. Like money was always going to find. So I'm gonna figure out a way to make money somehow. Worst case scenario, and we joke about this all the time on our calls, but like worst case scenario, I'll just suck it up and go back to the restaurant. Like, like
We're
worst
not going to let
worst
that
case
happen.
scenario,
Yeah.
right. But and this is like me thinking back in like January ish, December of 2023 when we first met, right? And then this is like worst case scenario, like I'll just stay working at the restaurant, a little longer because I had already wanted to quit at that point in time. Because by that point in time, I thought I was gonna be the number one rookie of the year agent that ever existed, right? And so I was already had planning to leave the restaurant, and then I was like, you know what, screw it, let me just invest. And then within 2 weeks of me joining the mastermind, I went through your ChatGPT course and then used ChatGPT to create my own webinar on how to use ChatGPT and sold tickets to workshops, which pretty much paid for the whole year almost of me being in a mastermind within the first 2 weeks of being in the mastermind. And like, had I not had the financial investment required to join and start and that pressure, I definitely wouldn't have taken it as seriously. And I probably, honestly, if it was free, I probably wouldn't have even joined. I would have been like, I don't really got the time for it. And so let me ask you your thoughts on that. So like, why do you think that is that people who pay attention? Because I found it, I've learned it both through myself and through people who are now taking my courses, my workshops, my free stuff, and stuff like that. And now I get to see it. On the other hand, it's like, why do you think that is?
Well, just for starters, I have the same story in bigger numbers. I was 7 years into my business, things were
Mm-hmm.
struggling, and literally it was like, and I cried on your podcast last time talking about this.
Yeah.
This is going to go out of business. It was only I was paying to have this business open, and I spent, I think it was $12,000 of money that I did not have in a business that was making like $7,000 a month revenue. Right? We had to invest, and when I did that, you want to talk about burning the boats. There was nothing that I could do other than start doing what they told me to do and start selling my ass off. And so I did. And honestly, we had an unbelievable success story after that. And this person is a huge star now. But at that time, I was like his seventh or eighth client. It was very early in this business that he started. And he had all the right answers. That was great. I was lucky in that regard. But the real thing that motivated me was like, this is the only option. There is no other way but through. And so in that case, and then you can kind of extrapolate that downward when you talk about less and less investment. What you're doing is you're applying some pressure to yourself to force change, because the only way you can learn is if the same situation comes up and you have a different behavior. Well, the easiest way to change behavior is through pressure, is through, this has to change, right? That's why I love jujitsu, man. If somebody's got their arm around your throat, you're gonna tap. You're gonna get choked out. Or you're gonna tap. And so you got to figure out a way. I need to change the behavior. The next time that pops up, I need to do something to avoid that negative outcome. And so I do think there is something to people putting their money where their mouth is. If you want to, it's one thing to say like I'm going to quit my job and become a candle maker or whatever. It's a whole other thing to then go buy $10,000 worth of wax and not have rent for next month. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's commitment. That's burning the boats. There's a flag right there. It's a pirate flag and it says burn the ships. I would say burn the boats, but they said burn the ships.
Yeah. Same. There's a quote I love is like pressure bursts pipes and makes diamond.
Yeah,
Which one?
pressure.
Another quote I heard is the same boiling water that makes a potato soft will make an egg hard.
Yeah,
That's another
yeah,
good one that I heard. And so all right. So you had the success story, you invested in the thing, and now you're still investing in programs, even though
yeah,
you've seen the other side, right? Now there's always a higher mountaintop, there's always a higher peak to climb, right? And you have the plus equals minus. And for people like us, it makes just common sense. It's like you have to invest and grow. But like for people like we're not also the majority. We're like a small percentage of the population statistically. It's like for everyone listening, like what makes you continue to reinvest in yourself and your growth and development despite already having like a lot of success underneath your belt? Like what makes you want to keep doing that?
yeah. I mean, I could tell you sort of the business answer, and I will get there. But I really think it starts with the personal answer, which is I just found that very quickly when I started to take like real ownership of my life, not just
Hmm.
my business, but my life. And then as a result of that, my business, which was the way I chose to support my life, all of a sudden the conversations that I was having with like people that weren't doing that or were doing it in a different way, no disrespect to them, they weren't as engaging, they weren't as exciting, we didn't have as much in common. And so like there's a big part of it of just like the people that I spend hours with on phone calls or that I'll fly out to go see or we'll go on vacations together, they're entrepreneurs. And a
Hmm.
lot of them are doing better than me. And some of them are doing a little worse and some of them are doing about the same, right? But like it just from a personal perspective, I'm inspired by all of the people that I talk to on a regular basis. Now, this isn't like some Machiavellian, like I saw it on social media that you either have an inner circle or you have a cage. And like that's
Yeah.
true, but I didn't like make that decision of like, oh, you're out and you're out. No, it was literally just like, this is what happened. That you got a group of kids that are all one way, and then the one guy makes varsity for basketball, and all of a sudden he's hanging out with a different crowd, and it's not really his fault, right? And so I like to surround myself. I'm hungry to learn. I'm hungry to talk through the things that are going on in my life and the people that aren't doing those things. It's just not in their world. And so those things are not interesting to them. And the things that they talk about are not as interesting to me. Um, and I'm not one of those guys that doesn't want to talk business. Dude, if we're sitting around a fire, if we're out camping, like we're going to talk about business. We're going to talk about other stuff too. And so a big part of it was personal. From a business perspective, like you said, there's always somebody out there that's doing it better. There's always somebody out there that's like mitigating stress better. Forget about ways to make more money. Because as I've already said, like there are many ways to make more money. And that's very good. You got to make money and you should make more money. But there's also this thing of like, do you love your life? And so like my
Hmm.
friends that are entrepreneurs, most of them love their life. Or if they don't, like we're on the phone and we're talking about how to get back to that place. Right. And so,
Yeah.
I could introduce you to a bunch of people. I have friends that do 9 figures a year. I have friends that do 7 figures a year. I have friends that do 7 figures a year that choose not to do 8 figures a year because this is where their family is happy and they can do the things that they want and they have freedom of time. And I have friends that are, CEOs or COOs of big corporations, CFOs, and they can't get out to the beach with the kids. They're not able to, go on that trip. They're not at the birthday party. They're not at the baseball game. And so to me it's just a no-brainer to surround myself with other people, and that's why there's so many of these, let's just say masterminds, right? So many of them out there. There's masterminds out there for people that just want to like, hey, we're not going to have kids, we're not going to, maybe we're married, maybe we're not, but we're just going to be hammering it and we're going to go out and try and be billionaires, and like more power to you. But a big part of it is like understand yourself. What is it that you want? And I want the whole thing. I want to have a happy family. I want to have a peaceful home. I want to have enough money to buy the cars and go on the trips and have the house and all that. And I want to serve people at a really high level. And so that's where I've put myself, is around other men and women that are doing that.
Yeah, no, it's crazy that you brought that up. So me and my boy Darren. So I don't know if I ever told you about Darren. I
Shout
convinced
out to
him.
Darren.
Yeah, shout out Darren. So me and him, we've been doing a lot of collab episodes recently, and so one of our most recent one that hasn't come out yet, we talked about. By the time this goes live, it will have come out. But we talked about friends and business, and so I convinced Darren to drop out. So he was going to UConn, which is the same school as I was going to before I dropped out, just a year later. And then I convinced him to drop out, and so we both ended up getting into real estate. Very similar story after about dropping out, getting into real estate with KW, and now he's still focused on real estate. He also still talks to a majority of his friends from high school, which is I think it's like maybe one or two of them he like lost touch with, but for the most part, it's the same group of guys.
Yeah,
And we were talking about like what's it like, managing friends in your social life while also getting it into business, being an entrepreneur at this age, where most people at this age aren't trying to grow and have crazy, aspirations of big business, big business and stuff like that. And it's crazy because like me, he thought that I cut people off, and it's crazy because I just naturally, as you said, I got on varsity, right? Or not even varsity. I would say I just started playing a different sport,
sure.
right? It wasn't even about getting on I just started playing a whole nother sport. I felt like, and then the pandemic happened, so that naturally created distance for everyone. You don't really talk much to anyone. I also had sold my Xbox, or I stopped playing Xbox once I went to college. So pre-pandemic, I had already stopped playing my Xbox, so I wasn't talking as much with the guys. I would play every once in a blue, and then once the pandemic happened, by that time I was already never touched my Xbox, and then slowly but surely, I just started to find myself in other circles, other crowds, and the people that I used to talk to on a daily basis, slowly but surely, just got pushed further and further away. Not because I wanted them to, it just that's how the life unfolded for me, and it is what it is type of thing. And there's some people. There's one quote I think it said like some people are here for a reason, some people are here for a season, some people are here for a good time, some people are here for a long time, right? And it just goes to show like I want, of course, my boys to all be with me in this for the long run, but it's like I also don't want to have water flowers that are not going in the same direction as I'm going into.
Yeah, I
It's just
mean,
like,
go ahead.
no, I was gonna say like, yeah, for me, so like that's what it ended up becoming. Like I still have love, and we didn't have a falling off. There wasn't an argument or any like code or morals or anything backstabbing, anything like that. Like I still have love for all my boys. It's just like we just haven't talked in a long time because our routes slowly but slowly surely started like to drift apart. And like
Yeah.
for me, one of my boys, out of all my boys I used to talk to, I only talk to one still consistently. And we talk about like maybe like once or twice a week, play basketball. We've been playing basketball a whole lot the past like month. We've just been hooping almost every other day, almost every day. And then I got back in touch with one of my other boys, who I lost touch with during college and during the pandemic. But now we're again been for the past 2 3 weeks been hooping almost every other day, and so it's like that's just kind of how it all unfolded. But to your point, right, it's like it wasn't my intentional focus of who do I need to remove from my life.
Right.
It was just like that's how I ended up playing.
I think it's another situation though where it's like we analyze the outcomes. It's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
we drifted apart. Oh, they're not pursuing entrepreneurship. They're teachers or doctors or whatever, any number of things, right? But I actually think it's a lot easier than that. It's actually super duper easy. It's you do what makes you feel good, period. And you do
Mm-hmm.
what makes you feel good. So if you're looking for comedy and she's looking for horror, we're not watching the same movie tonight. Like it's that easy, right? And so there's the thing where you do what feels good, and so it's like what feels good for one person is like I want to play Xbox, I want to go to the bar, I want to get a blue collar job that makes enough money that I can support a family and turn it off at 4 p.m. or 3 p.m. or whatever. Dude, that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. The
Mm-hmm.
outcome of that is by design. It's what feels good to you. And your interest and what feels good to you and me is like, oh, I got to do more. I want to do more. I know I'm capable of more. I like the feeling I get when I help somebody, whether that's B2C or B2B, doesn't matter. Or even for somebody else. I've been an employee at companies and loved the thing we were doing. It was so easy. And so I really start, the older I've gotten, the more I cut all of that other stuff which is valid. Like all those things that we're talking about, all those outcomes and the reasons and the machinations of how we got to those outcomes, they're all very valuable to understand and to look at. So don't get me
Mm-hmm.
wrong, but it always comes back to interest. If me and my wife, I love my wife and we have a beautiful daughter together and we live in a wonderful place. If suddenly out of nowhere both of our interests just like went 180, it would be a real challenge to try and make that work. You see what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? We're lucky that our interests are aligned. We share common beliefs and principles, and we're not identical. We actually complement each other, right? But my point, my friends, the friends that I have, like they're growing and I'm growing, and so there's ways where we can relate on growth, even if it's not in the same industry, right? But I really think it really gets muddy, right? You can't, man, where did we go wrong? What happened in our relationship? Was it the Xbox? Was it basketball? Was it I moved? Was it COVID? None of that really matters. What really matters is like some of my best friends. Let's see. I've been in a room or a space with one of my best friends for a grand total of like 6 days. Another one of my best friends, 5 days. We
Mm-hmm.
do Zooms, we talk all the time, and then we like make a big deal of like, I'm gonna be in town, I'm gonna come out here, we're gonna hang out. But like the relationships that we share are very aligned. They're very empowering. My friends are like genuinely happy when I succeed, and I am genuinely happy when they succeed. I could tell you stories about friends of mine where it's like, wow, dude, you're flying to Europe on private jets all the time. You're bringing your family with you. You're like making it happen. I couldn't, not an ounce of jealousy in me about that. Of course, I'd love to do those things. That's not what I'm doing. I'm excited about what I'm building. And so I guess my point though is like, if you're out there and you're like, oh, I'm drifting a little bit from high school, I envy my wife. My wife has, when I met her, it was like 30, but of course, everybody gets married. And so that kind of adds to it. She's probably got 10 or 15 friends that she talks to regularly. Several of them are in a book club together. They go out and spend the night at each other's houses and go out for dinner and have wine and all that other stuff. I don't have almost any friends. I have no friends that I can think of from my high school. By the way, shout out to you guys. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. For me, it wasn't COVID. For me, it was I went into the army, right? So I went into the army, was gone for 4 years, and then I moved back to my state, but I moved back to Chicago, the city, instead of where I grew up. And so there was just a clean break, and there was no common connective tissue. There was no, I was finding ways that I was interested in, that I was making me feel good. And so those people that are in that circle still, it's nothing disrespectful to anybody that's not. I just think I'm pursuing growth and my interest. You're pursuing hopefully growth and your interest. And if those two things don't align, like there's no negativity there.
Mm-hmm.
I
No,
think family becomes a little different. I think if you're friends for 20 years, you should probably try to make it work and find common ground. But I think that's why it happens. Is just it doesn't make you feel good anymore, so you don't make time for it. I make time for the things that make me feel good. Like I said earlier, I look forward to making time to get to the gym that I go to. You know what I mean? So that's what I try to fill my life with. It's things that give me energy, that I look forward to, that I'm thinking about, I'm watching YouTube videos about. That's how I am with my friends too. It's like I'm thinking about my buddy's business. Oh, dude, I met this guy that you should talk to. He's in your industry. I just did this the other day. I saw an interview with a guy that was in Congress, and he was involved in sustainable farming. And one of my buddies is, working in a crypto project around sustainable farming and food. And that's something where I was like, you guys, you got to reach out to that guy. You guys would really hit it off. I'm thinking about my friends all the time, and they're thinking about me.
yeah, yeah. It's one of those things that you sometimes you can't help but get in your own, at least at my age, like I can't help but get in my own head sometimes, like
Me
you
too.
know, like like because I'm still like it hasn't been that long since I graduated, right? It's just like especially with the pandemic years doesn't count. So if anything, I graduated like 2 years ago max. Like the pandemic years don't count at all. So it's just like just yesterday. It feels like sometimes I went out to eat with my one of my boys. It was his birthday, and so we went out to the bar to hang out, and like a bunch of other people from high school were also there, and like while I was there in my head, I'm like, I can't really keep this conversation going much longer. I don't I can't find it in myself to figure out what next to talk about. And I could talk your head off, like if you let me.
Yeah,
And like it
me
was
too.
just something in me. I was just like, and this is like literally last weekend from the day we're recording. Like this is not too long, a couple days ago. We were just out this past Saturday. And I was just like, after like 10, 15 minutes of catching up, I was like, oh, well, I pretty much filled you into up to speed what I got going on, and you filled me up to speed what you got going on. And it's um like I don't know what else. Like, what do we talk about from here? And but like, there's certain people who are just like, for example, like you, man. I don't think there's been once that we've hopped on, and we've been talking almost every week for like, well, it's been a year and a half now.
Yeah.
I don't think there's ever been once where I was like, oh well. The only time we stop our conversations is because you like say too much information. I was like, all right,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna remember anything you mentioned from here on out. So let's call it short now. But like for the most part, it's I don't have to try at all to have a conversation. It's like as you said, we have similar interests, both pursuing growth, and it just aligns. And that's one of my big things that I've been doing. It's like, all right, who do I want to do life with? Because if the only thing we're taking with us are these, these experiences, these memories, right, I at least want to take them having done them with people that I genuinely align with, that I genuinely care for.
Yeah. Well,
And yeah.
I just want to add one little kind of contradiction to that for people like us, especially people in service businesses, entrepreneurs that are trying to understand customers, salespeople, anything like that, just empathetic people, right? One thing I've found lately, so I live in this really weird community. I live in a small beach town in Northwest Indiana on the coast of, it's on a national park on the coast of the Lake Michigan, right? So it's this weird group of like hippies and people that work in the city as executives and lawyers and doctors and stuff, but almost none of them remind me of me, right? Like, almost none of a few of them, but almost none of them are like entrepreneurs. But they're great people. And so I will actually say that they're like in that conversation with your friend, or in the very beginning when I would meet those folks at the beach or at a house party. We have house parties all the time here. I'd be like, oh, this isn't interesting to me. And I just decided, it was after I read Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference. I just decided to mirror and tag everybody. I just ask them questions, learn about them, find what is interesting about them. And I will say, like, this is not to disparage what you're saying. And certainly if a relationship's not giving you energy and there's no real magnetism or interest, or you don't feel good from it, by all means, cut it. But there is such a thing as like, I'm going to use this as the weight room. I'm going to try and learn. I'm going to try and get better and better at understanding other people. And I've found like there's people in this town that I have good relationships with, and like I don't have bullshit conversations. So like I just don't, like, the conversations you and I have are the same conversations I'm having on Friday night, at somebody's house or in their kitchen or whatever. Uh, and so to me, it's just like, okay, but I do have interest in learning about how other people see the world. I do have interest
Mm.
in people with different political views or from a different religion, or that have a bunch of kids or have no kids, or, sail or whatever. Like I was talking to a guy about sailing the other day. I've never been sailing. Um, and so just asking questions and learning from them. And I find that does two things. Number one, it makes me more empathetic. It makes me more open. It gives me more perspective. And then number two, man, they feel heard and they think you're the coolest guy they ever met because you're listening to them, like actually listening to them and asking them for more detail instead of just waiting to tell your one up story that is cooler than their story. Oh, you went to Cancun? I went to the south of France. Like, all right, cool. Well, I guess see you later. But there is such a thing as like, you can challenge yourself, and I think this is something that I've gotten through age and maturity, and that book helped. But like, sure, I'm better at basketball than you. You felt that when you're the kid that's better at basketball and all your friends are good, and the new kid comes in, he could say anything, but if he's bad at basketball, you're kind of like, it's hard for me to respect you. Same
Yeah.
thing in reverse. When you're the kid who's not good at the thing, and you come into that group, it's like really hard to get people's respect. They won't listen to you. They don't look at you in the eye. They're not like, oh man, meet this person. Like that's how it is as adults too. And so I do think it's like a superpower if you can find something interesting about everybody.
Yeah.
And I do think that everybody has something interesting about them.
No, I agree 100%. I agree 100%. I think like for things in this podcast, for example, as I said, there's people who I've definitely have different views on, but it's
Yeah,
like they're working on something exciting. I think that's the thing. Like what?
especially if they're excited about it.
Yeah, yeah. That's one of my biggest things. That's like also another. I don't know if I got this from you. I feel like I did, but I'm not sure. I think maybe Alex, but I feel like I do this all the time. Um, but it was like, how much is your conversation focused on the past versus what you're currently work on? That's something I've been like. That's been like my big litmus test, right, for conversations. Like, all right, how much is like this centered on like what we used to do versus like what we currently are cooking up? I think
Mhm.
that's where I get disinterested, where it's
Yeah,
like too focused on the past. But I
yeah,
mean, I love reflecting and like, catching up. Sometimes it's like
sure.
if that's if we only talk once on the blue, and each time we're talking, it's catching up. But then we're only ever talking about catching up. And it's like, what are you currently working on that is like something that, it could be anything. I was talking to one of my boys. He got into a sales job, and so we like me and him were chopping it up, and like and this is when we were out this past Saturday. So he just got recently in sales. I'm like, oh, you were like, who would have ever thought you get into sales? And he's a car dealership, and so he's selling cars now. It's like, man, it's like, how do you get that? And he's telling me, and then we started, talking, and so it's like, boom, it was something exciting that he was working on right now. Instead of
Yeah.
him talk, me and him talk, we play football together. Instead of me and him talking about like, all the time he plays football on Xbox. Yeah, we talked about that, but then we started talking about like, oh, you're at a sales position now. Like, how's that going? And then
Yeah.
boom, like the conversation started like flowing effortlessly.
I will amend that to say, because you just pointed something out, like if he's excited about it, if it's
Yeah.
exciting, I mean, it's great if I'm excited about it, but it really matters. Are you excited about it? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people that aren't excited about anything.
Yeah.
Those
Then
people
it's
bother
like,
me. I'll be honest. Those people bother me a little bit. Like I know people where they're like, "Oh, you don't understand. I'm really focused on my family and relationships." And by the way, me too. Like I'm really focused, and I'm excited about my family and my
yeah,
relationship.
the people who are excited but have like a monotone voice, so nothing they say sounds exciting, is the
Yeah,
worst.
I do think that people like you and I were both extroverted. You know, if you do a personality test, we probably have some
Yeah.
similarities there. I do think that it is harder for me to connect with people that would be the polar opposite of that. But
Yeah.
actually, like sometimes I do that. There's a couple people I can think of. Like back at the gym, I had a client that was like I'm spirit of the puppy, man. You come in and I'm like, hey, I'm hugging you, the whole thing. And this person, guy, computer guy, might have been a computer engineer guy, was just like very, and it was just like I'm gonna pull it out of him over 6 months or a year or whatever. And I love that guy, and we
Yeah.
get along really well. And so, what are you into? And I can always find some common ground, whatever that is. And so, I do think there is an element of this whole conversation where it's like sort of geared towards this type of person, like how you and I are in that way, because those people are crazy successful too, and those people have great relationships in many cases. But yeah, you got to be excited about something, even if you're not screaming from the rooftops.
Yeah, no,
Like,
100%.
I
Well,
mean,
Jason, I mean, we could keep this conversation going almost indefinitely.
yeah.
But last time you hear, you answered the famous 5 questions. So I would hate to be boring and ask the same 5 questions again. So um, I'll just ask you this to end off, man. For anyone that is looking to get into business, has no business experience, like, what would you recommend them taking like as a first step to get on the right path, regardless of industry, regardless of whatever it is, service or product based, like overall, like what is some general principles that you live by when it comes to like starting a business so you can start off on the right track?
I would say for starters, like really understand yourself. So do you have to? Can you enjoy your life working as an employee and just trying to do better and better at that and make more and more resources that way? If you have to be an entrepreneur, I think you should. Because a lot of people I talk to are like, oh, I really should, start to work out, or I really should start a business, or I've been thinking about people that want to become entrepreneurs. If they're not currently, it's because like there's forces at play that are stopping them. And so like number one, you got to want to do it. You got to really want to do it, because it's going to kick you in the nuts forever, and you actually kind of got to learn to love that. You got to learn to be like, all right, where can I find the next place that I'm going to fail, because I've found over time that that's going to generate my next growth, right? Sure. So number one is you gotta need it. You gotta want to do it. You got to be like, I would rather live in a crappy apartment or in my car, but be doing the things that I care about and creating the vision that I have with the people that I pick to serve the people that I pick, than make 200 grand a year at some corporate gig or whatever, right? Okay, so that's like baseline. And then number two, I love the idea of a muse project, right? Something that has low stakes. So you got a degree, you're starting to learn about yourself, you got a job, it's paying the bills, you're able to pay your bills and have a relaxed life. Do a muse project. What are you interested in? So when I got back from the military, which is the opposite of entrepreneurship, I moved to the city of Chicago, and I was into bikes and computers that I couldn't afford. So what I start flipping bikes and computers on Craigslist. I just did it as a hobby, and I probably netted, I would buy and sell bikes for anywhere from $100 to $1,500, maybe 2 grand. I probably netted like $5,000 over the year or two that I did that. But what it taught me was like, oh, I'm like super interested in this. I was like learning the market of like what bikes were what and what MacBooks had what components and what that would be worth. And so I had this like arbitrage where I could figure out. None of this is to, all this to say is like I did something that I could still have a regular job and do. And I found out that like put yourself, you can kind of test yourself a little bit with these muse projects. I think your generation is the best generation in history at doing that, for a number of reasons. But I think lean into that, like try it out. My little sister does e-commerce on the side. She has a great corporate job that she's earned and like does very, very well. She's probably the most successful person in my family. And she wanted to challenge herself, so she started this e-commerce business, and wouldn't you know it, it's starting to take off. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's all she does in the future. um, and just read books, join a mastermind, surround yourself with people that are out there trying to win. I think that's about it.
All right, Jason. Well, I appreciate as always your time and appreciate your advice. And man, it's crazy how fast time flies since we first met each other and since our last podcast. So we're definitely gonna have to do a couple more of these. We're gonna keep
Anytime.
these going.
Yeah, I
Just
love doing it, man. I love talking to you anytime. Happy to come on, so anytime you want.
all right, Jason. Take care.
Thank you, brother.